Well, hello there, and welcome to the Riverfront Reds Show. I am Seth Shaner. I'm pleased to welcome in Chris Garber. Chris, I didn't send you the memo. It's dressed like David Bell night.
I apologize. I've got my Marion's Pizza shirt
Oh,
on tonight.
you don't understand. My wife's from Centerville, so yeah, Marion's been a part of my life for really about half my life now. So
Dayton's number one.
and
Anyway.
that's what they say, right? I always I like to kid the family, and I get kind of the black sheep treatment when I do. I say, why don't we just go to La Rosa's this time? They don't like that. There's a La Rosa's right there in Centerville. But nope, we got to go to Marion's. So, hey, welcome. We've got so much on tap for this show this week. I actually feel like reinvigorated because week after week of just trying to find something to talk about. And here we have a treasure trove of information. And I'm so glad that you joined me. So first off, I wanted to give you a bit of trivia. Have you ever been on the website Sporkle?
Yeah, that's like with the lists.
Yeah, it's like trivia where you fill it, like you just answer the questions, and you know you type in every name in the book, and if it's right, it's right. If it's not, it just doesn't do anything. But I was on one today, and it wanted me to list anybody since 1990 for the Reds who had gotten an MVP vote. And it did it. It showed me the years. Okay, so 1990, Eric Davis, Barry Larkin. I know Jose Rio got one or more in 1992, and so on and so forth. Sabo and even Paul O'Neill and all that. But I filled it all out. There was like, I don't know how many, 40, 50 guys, right? And I got to 2023. I got Ellie De La Cruz in 24, okay? But there's one hole, and I'm like, I can't come up with this guy. So I want to ask you right as we start, the only guy in 2023 to get at least one MVP vote. And the funny thing is, it listed him as having 0% of the vote. So, so I guess I'm trusting that he actually got a vote because they say he did. So who would be your guess? And I already kind of told you it's not Ellie De La Cruz.
Yeah, geez. I mean, did India get a vote?
Nope.
Is it a relief pitcher?
Nope. I tried Diaz. Nope. Because he had a good year in 23.
Yeah. Tyler Stevenson?
Nope. I tried every name I thought I could think of.
TJ Friedel.
It was TJ Friedel. Yes.
Yeah, I can see somebody liking TJ Friedel.
For an MVP vote, though, can you imagine? Like Bob Nightingale put Joey Votto 5th in 2017, but somebody voted for TJ Friedel in 2023. Well, that was a bit of trivia to start things off. Well, hey, the show notes, I'm proving they're a living organism because when I start putting this thing together, a flurry of activity happened. But I want to talk to you first about the signing of Austin Hayes. Okay. That was the outfielder. He's a right-handed thrower and batter. He was signed yesterday. He's got a 9.1 career WAR on Baseball Reference, but last season was negative 0.1. Only 235 at-bats between the Orioles and the Phillies last year. He did make the All-Star team in 2023 when he had a 769 OPS and a 114 OPS plus. Had a 3.2 WAR back in 2021, and he's had a good career, So I guess the Phillies got him, and he ended up with some kidney issues or something like that. He had some injuries as well during the season. So the estimated arbitration number would have been about $6.4 million. So the Phillies non-tendered him. The Reds get him for $5 million plus some incentives that might take him up to that 6.4. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the world's greatest Austin Hayes expert, but I kind of, done a little research over the last couple of days. And I mean, he's a legitimate major league player, right? I mean, that's kind of how I would describe him. It's not everything this team needs. I think he's maybe an average to better big leaguer when he's on. He's supposedly a really good defender. Maybe not the fastest guy, but a good base runner and a legitimate hitter against left-handed pitching in particular. He's not, I think they need a B plus or an A minus level hitter. And he's probably a C plus B minus level hitter. He's better than whatever grade I'd give Stu or Will Benson at this point.
That's the question.
So from that perspective, it's definitely an improvement. If he's a 4-win player, that's better than a replacement level player who they probably would be putting out there. I just like to see a guy added to this team who could get an MVP vote and not in a
and not a fluke one. Well, so that's where I used to listen to years ago when he was on Fox Sports Radio. Steve Zabin, he had a sports talk show. He still does show actually up in Milwaukee now. He had these rating systems and things like that, and he go, is it meh or is it meh plus? So I guess for me it's somewhere just above meh. It's like, hey, this is a good deal. But it's the type of deal that I worry that the Reds just make pretty much every year. You get the guy and wait it out, and find the guy. Now, sure, with incentives, and maybe they'd be happy to pay 6.5 if a guy could get 4 or, like that'd be okay. So then the question to answer what you already said, is he better than Stuart Fairchild? Yeah, we think he is. Because he'll likely take his at bats if Stu's even still on the team, I guess. Because I don't think Spencer Steer, if he's mostly an outfielder now, is going to sit down for either of those guys, on a regular basis. All 3 right-handed batters. So I guess that's where it is. Did you improve your 4th outfielder spot?
Yeah, and I'm still interested to see what Terry Francona does with his team. There's a lot of platoony sounding pieces.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pieces that don't fit neatly into a defensive position. Thinking about Gavin Lux primarily, but Spencer Steer. Like, there's a lot of these guys that we're going to ask either to do a lot of things or to play maybe out of position. And it could all add up to a really cool puzzle, or it could be the Island of Misfit Toys, really, depending on how it shakes out. And, one thing, like with this move and with the Lux move and Brady Singer and a couple other moves we'll talk about, I think Nick Krall has had a really good offseason at, I'm not going to say winning trades because I don't think he's ripping people off, but making good value buys.
Mm-hmm.
But, if I go to the grocery tonight and I buy 5 things that are on sale and I don't come back with any steak, it's not going to be the best meal that I've ever made. And that's kind of how I feel about it. He's getting a lot of things on sale and he's not overpaying. Mm-hmm. And I know he's got to watch his pennies, but I don't know that we've got a main course.
Yeah. Chad Dotson, who, I keep looking down below the screen here. He may try to join us here in a little bit, but we'll see about that. But he tweeted just before we went on the show. He said, Nick Krall has made a number of moves this offseason. I like every single one of them. None of them really moved the needle much, in my opinion, although maybe Singer or Lux if we're lucky. Or none of them really seriously addressed the weaknesses of last year's team. But the Reds are somewhat better, and that's a good thing. So, yeah, some things fit better. Now, hey, I would argue that Spencer Steer proved last year over a full year that he can play outfield. I don't really have a problem there. It's when you try to tell me that Gavin Lux is going to play third base, that he's never really done, or even outfield where he's hardly ever done. That's when I worry a little bit because he showed last year that they had to move Mookie Betts to shortstop because he couldn't play shortstop coming off his injury. So I don't even really want to see him on that left side of the infield when you have guys named Ellie De La Cruz and Matt McLean.
No, I'm with you.
So there's that. Okay, so I was mentioning how the show notes are a living, breathing organism. I had Hayes, and then I was like, okay, we're going to have to talk about a few other things we may have to make up. But then as I got through it today, the Reds acquired Taylor Rogers. And this comes as such a last-minute thing late in the afternoon that I was actually listening to MLB Network Radio in my car this evening, and they were replaying the show. What do they call it? Loud Outs with Ryan Spielborgs and C.J. Nitkowski, former Red and Red farmhand. And they actually had Taylor Rogers on as part of Players Week. Every year right before spring training, MLB Network does Players Week where they rotate a bunch of players. And I was like, wait a minute, was this show recorded much earlier today? Because he came on as a member of the Giants. And when I heard it, now he's a member of the Reds and he has to leave his brother who was on his team. It's just all crazy. But But anyway,
his twin brother. I'm wondering, if Nick Kroll could fall victim to some sort of Parent Trap scheme here, where the wrong Rogers brother shows up. I mean, I guess one's left-handed and one's right-handed, so we should be able to figure it out. But
there were twins that played for the Washington Wizards like 10 to 15 years ago, and you never will convince me that they didn't do that. I forget what their names were and where they played in college. They played on like Kansas or UCLA or somebody.
Not the Lopez brothers, is it?
No, not the Lopez. They're not identical really either. So,
no.
Well, not with their hairstyles, I should say. But no. So I was worried a little bit, still kind of wondering about this bullpen and what it's going to look like. But you get a guy in Rogers. He's 34, but you're really only looking at this year. All right, he's due $12 million. C. Trent Rosecrans and others reported that the Giants will eat some of that money. I saw one thing on Twitter, but it's not verified, that it's actually half, that the Giants are willing to eat half of it. And all the Reds gave up is minor league right-handed pitcher Braxton Roxby. And if Chad was with us, this is when he'd say I made that name up. But Braxton Roxby did pitch in Double-A this past year. Anyway, back to Rogers. He had an ERA plus of 161 last year. And he was an all-star back in 21. But last year he had a 2.40 ERA with 64 appearances, 60 innings pitched, 64 Ks, 22 walks, a WHIP of 1250, 1.250. I like it. I like it.
Yeah. I mean, this is, I'm always skeptical of relievers, and they're inherently, highly variable in their performance. But this guy's only had one season in his whole career where he had an ERA plus under 100.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been good to excellent every single year of his career. And I mean, at some point after, 10 years in the major leagues, like, that's who he is.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, most relievers fall into that. Hey, if they're good for 1 or 2 or 3 years, it's time to maybe cut bait. You don't get Mariano Rivera or Trevor Hoffman or, fill in the blank with the more rare guys that often. But Rogers seems to be that guy. I mean, he, like I say, had the one all-star year. I think it's a good pickup. I mean, it's not my $6 million, but if it doesn't end up working out, then okay, it is what it is. But nobody's going to, blame them for what they gave up for it or any of that. And it's a veteran guy coming in as well. And Estevez was rumored for 2 different times this offseason to be in talks with the Reds, and he ended up signing with the Royals tonight. So as we record on Wednesday, so good job. And then of course, if they move Graham Ashcraft to the bullpen, which I think they should, I think the bullpen does look a lot better, even with just this move right here.
Yeah, it's certainly has the potential to be a strength, which you can't always say for Reds bullpens.
No, they're pretty good this past year, but I think you're right. Ian Jabot signed a minor league deal before we started recording this evening. Certainly wouldn't argue with him starting at AAA and coming up at some point. He's proven he can be at least that spot guy here or there. And then another one today, Wade Miley signed a minor league contract. He's coming off that Tommy John surgery. It likely wouldn't be able to pitch till mid-May. He could earn up to $4 million with this deal, or he could opt out by June 1st. It's kind of choose your own adventure.
I've got some fun Wade Miley facts here.
Okay, go ahead.
So I was looking at his baseball reference page, especially, he hasn't been with the Reds for a little while. I was kind of checking in. And Wade Miley has the craziest career. He's always hurt in even numbered years.
Okay.
So I went back and looked from 2017 to today. In the odd numbered years, he's averaged 152 innings pitched. And the even numbered years, and I took 2020 and I kind of multiplied it up to make it a full season worth, he's averaged 43 innings a year. So he's like, we should be good this year once he gets back and healthy. I think he'd be ready to go for a full season. I don't know what kind of conditioning program he does.
Yeah,
that he's only good every other year, but he's been solid. Even when he pitches, he's good.
Yeah,
or at least like competitive, right? He's not an ace. I don't know exactly the plan. I guess it's rotational depth because he's never really pitched in relief, and I
Right.
don't think he's suited for that. But as a guy who can go out and give you 5 innings, keep you in a ball game, 6 innings maybe. Worst comes to worst, it's not a bad plan. J or whatever place that will be in the plan.
Well, you're going to need more than 5. You're going to need more than 6, 7, or 8 probably too. So, yeah, having that depth and having that veteran, and I mean, when I was going through there, you said even number of years. He pitched for the Cubs in 22, and doesn't everybody just look heavier in a Cubs uniform anyway? Anyway, okay. But no, he had a no hitter with the Reds, obviously, up in Cleveland during the COVID stuff, and this is an interesting theory you've brought up about the even and odd years. I hadn't looked at it quite that way, but last year only appeared in 2 games. And I think that wasn't that. Yeah, he got hurt and had to go get the Tommy John. So
yeah, I don't know when the injury was. I don't know if he was kind of up and down before, or if it's as soon as he showed up.
Be ready by May. I think it would have had to be fairly early.
That's true. That's true.
So no, and certainly the the pitch clock can't be to blame for his injuries because he works faster than anybody in the world. So
that's a good point. Yeah, he's my favorite pitcher for that reason.
All right, so I'm going to push back some of the other stuff. Phil Castellini opened his mouth again, and I want to see how the rest of the show goes and how much time we fill before I bring that up and we go too deep. Ellie De La Cruz will be one of 3 players on the MLB The Show cover, which is pretty cool. I don't think there's an MLB The Show jinx like the Madden jinx, so we should be okay. Paul Skeens and what is it? Gunnar Henderson are the other guys. So that's pretty cool to have 3 of the younger superstars in the sport on there.
Yeah, it's super exciting to have one of your guys, marquee player in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, no doubt. So I guess as we look at this, we're recording on Wednesday night. If anything happens on Thursday before we release this around midnight, I apologize. But where are you as far as, I guess we agree that this is not really the most ideal. I mean, certainly going out and getting the guy that you said, like, a no doubt all-star, that would be fun. But what more do you want them to do, and what more do you think they will do? Are they kind of just about done, you think? Or
yeah, I think they're just about done unless something falls into their lap. Or I don't know. I guess they could be thinking about more trades, but the financial situation of different teams, it's like you don't always understand what's going on, right? I wouldn't have pegged the Giants this morning as a team that needed to shed $6 million in payroll and would give up a player to do it. Maybe they're trying to use that money for something else. I don't know, but so I don't think you can rule things out like they're baseball trades, but they're made for non-baseball reasons. So something like that could come up, but I think they're done. I think they shook the couch cushions once and came up with a little bit more money to get Austin Hayes. I don't think, this year's Nick Castellanos is going to show up.
That'd be fun
next week or next month, rather.
A guy I'm going to mention a little later in the show during viewer mail. It's his birthday today, and he and I have been joking back and forth that old leather pants keeps saying on The Athletic that Jim Bowden keeps saying that they're going to get Luis Robert. They're going to get Luis Robert. They're going to trade it with the White Sox. It's been rumored since basically November. And my friend's birthday is today, and he says, maybe they'll make that trade on my birthday. And I said, I don't know. I said, but if they do and he stinks, can I blame you?
Yeah. So what kind of package does it take to get him?
Well, apparently more than we've been willing to give up so far. I guess I don't know for sure. I know certainly, the 2 Burns and Louder are not going to be dealt. So you can quit asking for those guys. I'd heard maybe they like Lodolo, but Lodolo, I guess that'd be fine by me. But Luis Robert has one really good year, and that was like 2 years ago as well in 23, I think. And every other year in the big leagues is not nearly as impressive. So I don't know. I'm loath to give up too much, but I'm also not Mr. We got to keep all the prospects. So I don't know. I would guess it would take 3 at least decent prospects, or maybe. I always said I wish that they would have dealt with them when they still had their old general manager, Ken Williams, because he would make the trade for Jonathan India, 2 or 3 years ago.
Oh
When,
yeah, for sure.
India wasn't that good, but
It's his kind of guy.
you could have traded for that kind of thing. So I don't know. I don't know what it would take. I don't know where they are. It seems like, certainly the White Sox are building. I don't know what to call it, rebuilding. They haven't been good for years. Here I am, a Reds fan, saying that, but yeah. So I don't know. I guess, and it shores up the outfield, right? If you could get a Luis Robert, but are you guaranteed to be that much better?
No, I don't think so. I mean, yeah, I don't love him. I mean, I feel like that's a little more in that kind of let's hope thing. And guess he's a big name. I don't know if he's a big name to Cincinnati fans. I don't think he's going to put, rear ends in the seats.
Yeah. Well, if he hits the ball out of the ballpark, he would. You're maybe not on the day after opening day. We don't, drive through the ticket window, but I don't know. But I did say if the Reds get him, I think I'll have to call him Luis Robert.
Oh yeah,
I think that's only right. I mean, this whole Robert thing. I don't think anybody in Cuba is saying Robert. But we tend to change these things around. So, well, hey, before we get to viewer mail, I want to talk about this was going to be the big topic of the day, and then we had some transactions. So this gets pushed back to B or C block. In the past week, 2 different national entities have released a list or just picked or whatever who they believe are the most improved teams in baseball. And this is before what the Reds have done today. So this is pretty interesting, today and yesterday. But a week or so ago, Buster Olney of ESPN and dairy farming fame. I don't know if you know that. He grew up a dairy farmer.
Oh yeah, right.
He was the first to release his teams that he had done the most to improve this season, since from 2024 to 2025. And this list, unlike the one we'll mention later, it doesn't say anything about the Dodgers, which was crazy to me because it's like, I know the Dodgers won the World Series, but have you seen what they've spent this offseason? So
Yeah.
the Dodgers
have more talent than the Reds have.
That's right. So only he writes the piece, and it's, being a writer, in one of my other jobs, it's like usually when you do something like this, you lead into it, and he leads into it with a full, like, I don't know, 8 graphs, and it's like boom, boom, boom. And he talks about Terry Francona's visit to the Dominican Republic to visit some of the players down there, including Ellie. And he plays up the conversation where he says, what do you want to do? And Ellie says he wants to be the best player in baseball. And he says, well, Tito comes back by amending it and saying, how about you be the best player on the best team in baseball? And that makes us all like our hearts aflutter, right? But before he gets to the list, he lays out the additions. Brady Singer, we've talked about before. Jose Trevino, the backup catcher that they acquired from the Yankees. Gavin Lux, who you and I just talked about a few minutes ago. And then that was before we got Austin Hayes and those kind of the things we talked about today with the Rogers trade. So the list starts and only talks about the 1-run game record in 2024. Do you remember how bad it was for the Reds?
It wasn't great.
15-28 in 1-run games. So, he certainly, tell me whether it's luck or not one year to the next, right? These 1-possession games in the NFL seems the same way. One year the Bengals win all of them, the next year they lose all of them. A lot like getting turnovers in football as well. You got the same guys one year to the next. Was it in 2005? I think they picked off the NFC Central or the NFC North teams, each of them, like 4 or 5 times each. The Bengals did. And it's like, how? Why? So anyway, he talks about that and how with Francona it's going to be better. There's a track record there. So the list after the Reds are Boston, Arizona, Texas, and Washington. And again, doesn't say the World Series champs are ineligible for this, but they're not on there. So we already talked about pizza. I was going to say La Rosa's just for Cincinnati's sake, but you're wearing the Marions. They cut that a little different, though. That's tavern cut. So maybe we should stick with the pie shape, all right? If you're making this into a big pizza pie, how much of it includes Buster Olney's former coworker at ESPN, Francona, as the reason the Reds are there? I mean, especially before Austin Hayes and the flurry of 2 or 3 moves today, what they're going on is basically the manager.
Yeah, I think that's 80% of it. And then, 10% luck,
Yeah.
and I don't know that I believe that one-run games in baseball are entirely luck.
Okay.
I'm not going to say they're all entirely bullpen either. I think teams that don't score a lot of runs lose a lot of one-run games because they only score 2 or 3. And so even if they get good pitching, they're easy to beat.
Sure.
You know what I mean? You're not going to, you just have more one-run games, and maybe they become luck in there. But so I think that to me, that's what I saw last year was like they just didn't score a lot of runs.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, yeah, I don't think the Brady Singer slice of the pie is any objective view is going to say that's a big, a big change. Or Gavin Lux is fine, but Gavin Lux isn't going to be a 10-win player.
If you made, if you didn't put their names on it and you put Gavin Lux and Jonathan India put together, I think, side by side, I assume I would go toward Gavin Lux for what he offers and what side of the plate he bats and things like that. But I don't think, again, it's like there's a joke going around as an Ohio State fan that Penn State took Jim Knowles, a defensive coordinator, and, Penn State's always had a good defense, so they're getting the best defensive coordinator in the country, allegedly. And so that means, that they're going to go from an 11-1 team that loses to Ohio State to an 11-1 team that loses to Ohio State. So it's like, again, like how much of a difference are we making here with some of these moves? I think the Singer trade, helped a lot. I think the rotation is much more stable by getting him. But Buster Olney was joined nearly a week later by MLB Network analyst and former GM of the Rockies, Dan O'Dowd, which it's interesting. He hasn't been the general manager of the Rockies for at least 10 to 15 years, and he hasn't gotten another job. So that's been interesting. So he put his out. I looked for the video and I couldn't find it. It's just like a screen grab. But his said not including the Dodgers. Okay, so we're at least taking that out of here. But it came with just a graphic, and it just said Reds hired Terry Francona, added Brady Singer and Gavin Lux. Okay, so Red Sox, Cubs, D-backs, Rangers, Athletics. I actually think the Athletics, if you want a sneaky team, I didn't have on my bingo card that you're going to leave Oakland for a AAA ballpark and suddenly start spending money. So for them to do what
going on there,
that gets me. So I don't know. What do you normally? Anybody who talks about baseball, for the most part, I guess, who tries to be knowledgeable says, manager doesn't make that big a difference. But there are managers who we just feel like they do. And certainly I've always felt I wish the Reds maybe would have gotten rid of Dusty Baker a year earlier than they did and tried to get Francona when he went to Cleveland in the first place. So
yeah, I mean, we've talked about him before, and I think it's no exaggeration to say he's one of the top 2 or 3 managers, and I wouldn't argue with anybody who said he's the best.
And that's part of his tenure,
that is a big. I mean, it is a big thing. I mean, he can only win with what he's got talent-wise, but I don't know. I am open to the idea that the Reds have enough talent to compete with that manager. I'm not convinced that they do, but I certainly at least like cautiously optimistic at this point, which is more than I could say since 2020.
Well, and it goes way beyond what's being done between the first pitch and the last pitch. And I'll give David Bell some credit, especially 2019. And of course, the pandemic kind of threw a wrench into a lot of things, I'm sure. But I really do feel like the approach he and his staff took changed things up enough in Cincinnati that they were going to try to find those margins where they could, find little areas where they could improve, whether it was the catchers working what they worked on, or, the way they worked with the pitching staff, obviously, and they abandoned that pretty quickly with Kyle Bodie not being part of it for more than a couple years. But I I think I give him a little credit for David Bell for the way he had a plan and tried to enact it. And the argument is that Terry Francona does that and more. And it's just those things of putting a hand on a shoulder and all those things you and I talked about in that one episode where we watched the '04 Red Sox documentary and came up with, my goodness, he just motivates. But, you could argue, I guess, that Cleveland had similar payrolls and things like that while he's there, but Cleveland you go back to the mid-aughts. I mean, the John Hart and, the power they had in the 90s and all that was a little different. Once they got into the mid-aughts and into the 2010s, they just come up with these guys. Their staff just does such a good job of giving Terry Francona players in Cleveland. I don't know. I'm a little wary that the Reds don't have that aspect.
I think it's a fair doubt to have. I don't know, what's chicken and what's egg. I mean, I read somewhere in the last week, some anecdotes about Francona really being instrumental in Jose Ramirez's development.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And it's not like there's not some dudes in Cincinnati.
No, you're right.
I mean, I keep talking about like they don't have any entree. I mean, they got one of the flashiest steaks in the restaurant business in Ellie De La Cruz, and Matt McClain, barring some, his injury being debilitating, that guy's legit too.
Yeah.
Like he's a legit ball player. So you got two like guys who were capable of MVP consideration, I think, in a realistic world in your infield. So, maybe it ends up that way, and that, Austin Hayes as a solid part on a contending team is a good fit.
Yeah. It's like, I always said, like, even like in basketball, there's certain guys you just don't want to be the guy. They're good players, but like the year that Aaron Kraft for Ohio State basketball was asked to be the guy, it just didn't go as well, and Dayton beat them. So
yeah, the Chris Bosh theory.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and in Hunter Green, I mean, his improvement every year has been something. And if he takes even another small step this year and stays healthy all year, that's an ace. That's what you're looking for at the front of the rotation. So you're right. They do have something to work with. The farm system has 5 guys in Keith Law's top 100, and Keith Law from The Athletic is loath to enjoy anything Cincinnati Reds. So he's got 5 out of 100 are Cincinnati Reds prospects, including Rhett Lauder and Chase Burns. So, the cupboard's not bare. It's not. It's just not, not the Los Angeles Dodgers giving the manager whatever he needs. So that's just where they are, I guess. So the pie was cut up, and it was, way too much Terry Francona probably for my taste, because if you told a Reds fan the day after they signed Terry Francona, if you told any of us at the end of this, there's going to be 2 major national, either a journalist, which is Buster Olney, or an analyst, which is O'Dowd, those 2 guys are going to say the Reds had the best off seasons, the most improved team of any team in baseball. If you told me that the day after they signed Francona, I would have thought they went out and got these guys. Like, any of the guys that we've talked about and kind of wished they would have had. And they really haven't. They've gone and, as I read Chad's tweet, as you said, they've gone and filled some good moves, and they're probably better than they were this time last year, which is good. But they haven't, like, again, I would have told you, oh yeah, that means that they really went out after they used that momentum, right, from Francona, and they went and signed a bunch of guys.
Yeah, it's surprising that they are getting that much love, based entirely on hiring their manager, honestly. Maybe not. I mean, I don't know. Maybe if you just look at it like a year ago, a lot of people were excited about the Reds.
Mm-hmm.
And then, they took a big step back, and maybe it's a little bit of kind of just a rebound from that, and looking at that roster and saying, yeah, those guys are pretty solid players.
Yep.
So
No, I agree with you. That's it's such half full or half empty. How do we look at it? And unfortunately, sometimes as a fan, you go the negative route. But there is one of our viewer mail questions coming up that goes more of a positive route on this whole thing. So let's dive into viewer mail now. I was impressed. Thank you out there. This was on our Slack channel and through our Patreon subscribers. They really answered the call this week and gave us some good thoughts. And we'll go through these now. And again, the first one I'm going to read, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, so bad on me. Brian Bouty says, we're a few days ahead of schedule this year with the hay signing. Now, this is the half empty. I'm sorry. We're going to start there. But can we commemorate February 1st every year as Stockholm Syndrome Day, where we're all sick of the cold gray off season, ready for sun and green grass, and we talk ourselves into being happy over whatever quadruple A player or 1 year prove it guy off the scrap heap signed, and one more year of consensual delusion.
Yeah, that's it, man. That's being a Reds fan. Consensual delusion.
That's a good band name.
Yeah.
Consensual delusion. Joey Gaditza's in a rock band. He's our next question. So before we go on, Joey, maybe you want to take that name and run with it. That again, we've been through it a little bit, Chris, but this is the point. This is the dark spots of like Reds Twitter even 10 years ago, even like in 2012 when they were really good. There's still somebody not happy with Dusty's lineup,
Yeah.
I guess we didn't know how good we had it, but it is what it is, because that's, again, we talked about it with Hayes. They waited until the price came down and they got him. And I guess it's better than signing him for $8 million back in December, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess. But, counting on Austin Hayes to be, Jay Bruce in his best year, I just don't see that coming, right?
Well, look, last year we signed Austin Wins. This year we have Austin Hayes. I think it's an upgrade.
And actually, Wins is back, I think, on a minor league deal. So the catching contingent that's going to go to in pitchers and catchers report is definitely full now. We wondered there about a month ago whether they'd have anybody. All right, the aforementioned Joey Gaditza says Hayes at least gives them options out there now. He could prove to be a solid, sneaky sign, and he used an exclamation point. One more reliever and call it a day money-wise. Well, how about that? They got a reliever. Good job, Joey. You sent that before the trade. Good job.
CC Nick Kroll.
There you go. He must have read our Slack channel. Boy, I hope Nick's not in our Slack channel. Well, he did say trades are always on the table, and obviously they made one, and maybe they're not done. But that's cool. And Brandon Kamick wrote in, again, before Estevez signed with the Royals. He said, who's better? And it's fitting that he goes to the Royals because of this. Who's better? Wild Thing, Carlos Estevez, quote-unquote, Sheen, because, obviously
got it.
Sheens are actually
finest.
Or would you take Carlos Estevez, or would you take Ricky Karcher? Well,
yeah. Well,
what are
we drafting for?
The Ricky Karcher game was at Kauffman Stadium, so there is that. So that night will never be forgotten. And I'll say it again. I was there. All right. On to Andrew Williams, who says, this one's interesting. I want you to think about this. He says, I had originally planned to go in on opening day tickets for my dad. None of us in our family has been to one. But life changes, and we found out that we're welcoming another Reds fan dangerously close to opening day. So,
yay, congratulations.
Congratulations. Mazel, mazel. He said, so what Reds player or manager should I have deliver my son?
Corky Miller. It's always the answer.
Corky Miller. That is always the answer. And he would come do it. That's the thing, too. He's not doing anything else.
Put a mask over that beard.
He's stroking the mustache or the Fu Manchu or whatever he's rocking at the time. I have two sons, Chris, and I went to see Foo Fighters over by Pittsburgh, and it was 3 weeks and 2 days, I think, before my son's not even it was, I don't know if it was a due date. It was a day the doctor scheduled a C-section because
Okay.
our first son, we had to have a C-section, and she said, "We're going to just do it. We'll schedule it." And you know, I won't go into the complications as to why we couldn't try to do it the other way, but we couldn't. So we were like, "All right, here we go." And we were at the doctor, and she said, "No, you won't. You don't need to worry about going early. Your first one was 8 days late, and then we had to go C-section. So we're fine. We're going to be right on track here for that scheduled date." Not even like 18 hours after I got back from the Foo Fighters concert in Pittsburgh, her water broke. So I'm like, and the other thing was, it was a Tuesday, Thursday. They were in Pittsburgh on Tuesday and Indianapolis on Thursday. And I was deciding between the two. And had I been going to Indianapolis, I would have had to like get on back here.
No show.
So the Slack thread had some other thoughts. Now, I think Corky Miller is the winner, but somebody said Terry Francona, but also somebody said Derek Dietrich because he showed that he could be a beekeeper. So
Fair.
yeah. So there we go.
Oh,
All right.
man.
Jace Linford says it hasn't been the flashy offseason we had hoped for. Come on, man. We got Gavin Lux. But all these additions are kind of greater than the sum of their parts, so to speak. Yeah, we didn't get Robert, Ward, O'Neal, etc. But Trevino, Hayes, Lux, Singer, Martinez, returning CES McLean is greater than, and you're going to love this, Miley, Bubba, Ford, Jordan, Hurtubise, Spires, Benson, and Marte.
Yeah, that's what I agree with him. I was thinking too. Like they're not the most flashy pieces, but I do think they all fit.
They do, and the thing is, one of my criticisms back in those 2010 to 2013 era, they would spend some money. That was when they gave Votto the extension. They gave money to Phillips. They paid Cueto. They were paying Homer Bailey. But they seem to go cheap on the bench, right? But if you look at this, my big thing is if Marte and CES become anything, you all of a sudden have everybody from 1 to 26 is big league caliber at that point.
Yeah, or you've got things you can trade.
Exactly.
You can trade Espinal if those guys are good.
That's true.
You can trade Candelario if those guys are good. And I don't know what you get in return, but if they're not flailing around miserably, maybe you get another relief pitcher or a prospect,
Yeah, I agree with you completely because actually it's kind of nice to have. I think Espinal is a good piece to have right now and to say this is kind of like our, break glass if Marte just isn't ready or isn't good. And if not, then Espinal is a proven backup, and that's good too. So Jace is the guy that I think comes. Jace, you're getting the glass half full award because when you bring up some of those names, I mean, again, Chad would say Bubba who, So yeah, absolutely.
Well, I was sitting here as we were talking, looking back on the transactions from a year ago. Once they spend a little bit of money on Candelario and stuff, then it's like, it's Austin Wynns and it's Bubba Thompson and it's Josh Harrison for a couple weeks. Like it's just, when we'll see names like that again. But the recently departed Bengals O-line coach, Frank Pollock, had a saying, it's been attributed to him anyway, like no donkeys. Like you want a position group room where there's no complete stiffs. And I don't know that they always achieved that in Cincinnati, but I like the approach where you don't have any like complete, just obvious, not major league players on your roster. And I think they're probably there now. The floor is up.
You're kind of backfilling, right, with depth. So that's good. That's absolutely good. And we've told this story on this show or Late Night Reds when I've helped there. It's like Bubba Thompson, right? I mean, opening day, right? He's on the roster. They then later in the year, he gets a thing on social media that says he's been promoted to AAA. And it's like, wait a minute, he was on
Not
the opening day big league roster. How do you
not
get
how
promoted from Chattanooga? And now he's going to play college football. So, okay. So, all right. The last one is reserved for a good friend of mine. And actually, I'll tell you this story. In 1999, I was with Ohio State Student Radio. And my friend Ben Lewis, who it's his birthday today, happy birthday, Ben. Ben was with the sports information staff. He was a student also, but he's a little older than me. And they do like the PR, right? The media relations. And so he had to get to the games early. I got to the games early to get my chart ready and make sure we were all set up and everything. But this is during the 99 season when the Reds were making their run. And I remember at least twice Ohio State home games lined up, maybe a 3:30 kick with maybe a 1 p.m. Reds start. And at the old press box at Ohio Stadium, you could literally fly open a door, kind of like at a high school press box, and just walk out onto a bleacher. And you can't do that now. It's like a separate, structure just up alongside the stadium now. But back then you could do it. And so we'd be at the top of C deck. I've got my chart. I'm going through all the names of all the Iowa players or whomever they're playing. And we're listening to Marty. And literally that's kind of how I met my friend Ben. I knew I would see him, but we both bonded over being Reds fans in that magical 99 year. And, that was just, I'll always remember that, like sitting out on a bleacher in Ohio Stadium listening to the Reds while I'm getting ready for an Ohio State football game. Two of my favorite things, Ohio State football and Reds baseball. So happy birthday, Ben. But he came at me with that. I didn't solicit this. He came at me with this question, and I wish Chad was here, but I'm going to ask it to you, and we'll put it out on the Slack channel maybe too. Here's the question. You ready? If Ellie has Barry Larkin's career, is it a disappointment?
It's a trick question because I'm afraid that if he has Barry Larkin's career, only a few more years of it are going to be in a Red uniform. But
actually,
gosh,
go ahead.
no.
But I took it the other way, actually. Go ahead.
If he's a Red the whole time,
well,
and he has Barry Larkin's performance, no, that's awesome.
He wins one MVP and one World Series. We'd take that heartbeat, right?
Whatever, 17 years in the major leagues and goes to the Hall of Fame. Yeah, that's pretty great, and I will take it.
So Scott Rowland's going into the Hall of Fame. He goes into the Hall of Fame wearing the Cardinals cap, right? I get it. That's fine. He played for the Reds at the end. That's fine. But if you tell me we could go Barry Larkin, little stretch there, Joey Votto, and then overlap Ellie De La Cruz. I mean, that's almost. I was born in 1979. Like that would almost get me through, like, hopefully 2/3 of my life, like, or a half of my life, like whatever you want to say, like, 3 like 17-year stretches. Like that's a good stretch of my life, and then my kids and all that. Yeah, I mean, so the raw upside is higher than Barry, though.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, physical talent is probably more than Barry. I mean, and you got to remember, by the time Barry showed up in the major leagues, he was 23, I think.
Yeah, he was still pretty young considering he played in college at Michigan. But you're right, like either late 22 or early 23 year. Yeah.
Yeah. He was 22 and 107 days.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I guess he's not that much, but he wasn't Barry Larkin right away.
No,
his age 24 season is when he really, became an all-star for the first time, won a Silver Slugger for the first time, was really, a dominant player. But yeah, I mean, Barry one time hit 30 home runs. Barry one time stole 40 bases. That's, I guess he stole 50 another time.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's table stakes for Ellie, it seems like.
Yeah. Well, and then the other side of that is if Ellie could have a more healthy career, because Barry would have knocked down a few more doors as far as total hits and things like that. the milestones would have been more readily available for him. But yeah, I guess natural ability and athleticism, you would say that, but then everybody wants to compare him to Eric Davis, right? And so it's kind of like natural talent and raw power. Certainly, Eric was better than Barry, and
Yeah.
I don't know, they were comparable defensive wise at their different positions.
Yeah. I
But
mean, Davis is, I mean, to me, that's a natural comparison just from like the dynamic nature of it. I mean, Barry didn't make mistakes. Barry didn't have
right.
kind of, there was nothing he wasn't really good at. There was no aspect of the game that he wasn't excellent, like very good to excellent
Hmm.
at.
Well, and one of the reasons he didn't surpass Ozzie Smith earlier probably was that, because Ozzie was still doing the flips, and the weekly shows would show the great play Ozzie made this week on defense, and I I, I think there was. I mean, we're Reds fans, so we're going to say it, but there was at least a 4 or 5 year period where Barry was the better player, especially since he was always a better hitter than Ozzie Smith was, and yet it didn't translate into all-star starts,
Yeah.
or
Well, I
maybe
mean, half the years he was probably hurt at the All-Star break.
he got hurt at the All-Star game the
For
one
the
time
one year,
during
yeah.
the skills challenge.
Yeah. I mean, I think if Larkin had a full season where he'd hit 330,
Yeah,
I think that would have been a big. It would have been that was important back then.
it
And
was.
he had these years where he was always at like 295, 305, which is really good. And today would look even better.
Yeah.
But back then that wasn't batting title contention. You'd
Well,
have
that's
Willie
where
McGee hitting 340 or whatever.
yeah, and the funny thing was, and maybe it was just me being a stupid 9-year-old that didn't know anything, but back then it was funny because you would compare him to Ozzie at shortstop, but then there were times when he was getting compared to Tony Gwynn and what he
Yeah.
might do, because Gwynn was 4 years older, 5 years older, whatever he was.
Right.
And I remember it being like, well, Barry's gonna hit 340. He's got that talent. And I would hear or read that, right? And I was convinced. It was just like Jack McKeon saying Sean Casey was going to win 3 to 5 batting titles, and he never did. Sean Casey was a great player. I liked him a lot, but it's just like that thing of like, I thought Barry was going to become that, and he was still a Hall of Famer. So I don't know. I went with it in my mind a different way. I thought, well, if he has his career, that means I guess maybe he stays. Like I would take Hall of Fame, Ellie De La Cruz wins one World Series, wins one MVP, and is still there all the time versus, I guess if he goes elsewhere somehow, because you look at things differently when they're in Dodgers or Yankees uniforms, then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, he's one of the top 10 players of all time, or something like that. Because like Chipper Jones tried this thing this week of Andrew Jones because he didn't get in the Hall of Fame, and he said, tell me honestly, if Andrew Jones played his career in New York City for the Yankees, would he been in the first year? And I'm like, I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't
I don't
really
really know.
like everything they say about Jeter, and they try to say that about Jeter. I'm like, yeah, like 3,600 hits. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I mean, I loved Andrew Jones, but he was only like a good player for the first 10 years of his career.
and he hit 40 some or maybe 50 on the dot home runs like once when everybody was hitting
Yeah.
a ton of home runs. It was like the plateau of home runs was just higher at the time.
I mean, he had 377 hits after he turned 30.
That what? Are you
At
serious?
least his age 30 season and
He
beyond.
played in the World Series when he was 19, so
Right. I
yeah.
mean, he had like I said, he had a good 10, 11 years, and then he fell off the Dale Murphy cliff in some degree.
He sure did. He sure did. That's a good comp actually. Although Murphy had 2 MVPs at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the worst things that came of Harold Baines getting into the Hall of Fame is suddenly we just expect, and for a long time Dave Parker was there too. I'm kind of like, well, he had a great career, but okay. And
Yeah.
and I'm glad Dave's getting in. But my goodness, it's like if Harold Baines is in, then I
Well,
think that's
yeah.
said everything.
I mean, I think the bigger or at least among the best players in baseball for 2-3 years. I don't know that anybody ever thought that about Harold Baines. I don't even
No,
think it's the Harold Baines show, but
no, it's the same thing. And Rafael Palmeiro is not in for other reasons, but it's the same thing with Rafael Palmeiro. You look at his numbers; he has all the milestones, the home runs and the hits. I mean, he's but he was never the best at his position, like ever.
Harold Baines finished in the top 10 of MVP voting twice, and it was 9th and 10th.
So by that logic, TJ Friedel deserves to get in.
And in those 2 years, his wins above replacement were 2.1 and 2.4.
Wow. Yeah, see, I think Tony La Russa is to blame for this, and because he was on that committee, and I think Tony La Russa is to blame for a lot of different things in our game. So we'll leave it at that.
Let me just hold on. I want to look at one more thing here.
Yeah.
Oh no, I was almost right. Harold Baines' highest single season wins above replacement is 4.3.
Oh my
TJ Friedel's is 3.8.
See, there we go. We started the show with wowing people, me being wowed that TJ Friedel got a MVP vote, and now we close the show saying that he's not that far from Harold Baines. We can make numbers say whatever we want.
I love it.
Well, hey, I appreciate you joining me. It's been great chatting with you yet again. Hey, let's pump up the second edition of this book behind me, The Big 50.
Yeah.
You and Chad, the co-authors. Go ahead and tell me a little more about what's going to happen here.
Yeah, the revised and updated Reds Big 50 from Triumph Books is coming out in March 5th, I think sounds right. It is an updated version of the book that was released in 2018. We've kind of brought things up to date in terms of stats and references and things like that. And we added 3 new chapters in addition to kind of updating the rest of the book. So there's new content that never before seen that hopefully you'll check it out. It is March 4th is the release date. We had Chris Welsh agreed to write the foreword for this edition and really did a tremendous job. Just kind of ran with the idea and has some really cool stuff in there from him. And we're really proud of what it's like. And the good news is the publisher has told us that unlike the original edition, this one's never going to go out of print, basically.
Okay.
Something about the production costs are more controllable. So you'll be able to get it from now until we have to update it again because the 2024 Reds, the 2025 Reds win the World Series. So
I don't know if I ever told you, a friend of mine wrote a book about the Cleveland Cavs history, and it was everything was due like in May of what would it have been 2016, and he's like, no guys, I think we're gonna have to wait, and they're like, no, we can't wait, we have a hard deadline.
Oh no,
so he still went to work, right? He still tabulated some things from that season. I think he did the top 10 greatest seasons of Cleveland Cavaliers history or something like that. And it got down to it, and all of a sudden, like, they said, hey, maybe we should wait. He's like, I've been telling you this, but they did. They got the World Championship Cavs into the book. So,
well, nothing does more for book sales than a team winning. So,
yes,
I am hoping with all my heart that this book becomes outdated because there's a new number one moment from the 2025 World Series. And we'll have to rush a new edition out in 7 or 8 months from now.
So when you added 3 new chapters, do you take 3 out? So is it still
50?
Yeah. It's not 53 now?
It's not 53. There's no bonus. I'd be happy to email you the chapters that were cut if you buy the new book. But yeah, we kind of reworked some stuff. So it wasn't a straight 3 for 3. We combined 2 chapters into one about the 1940 World Series for 1940 season. So kind of moved some things around. And then, we wanted to get Ellie De La Cruz in the book. We wanted to get Hunter Green in the book. We wanted to get kind of some of the more recent things. While the team hasn't been great, there have been some awesome players and some cool moments. So we kind of reworked things to get that in there.
Well, hey, I look forward to it. March is a great time to buy a book because you're getting ready for the season. Hope is high. We can watch Ken Burns baseball while I hold on to the new Big 50. And I don't know if are you going to get to do another book tour? Are you going
I don't know. It's a little harder now that Chad's a little farther away from Reds country physically.
Yeah.
But hopefully we'll get some things going. Yeah, like I said, you can pre-order it now, and it'll show up on your Kindle on the release date and probably in your mailbox. I don't know. I pre-ordered a book and got it a month early this month. So
that happened to me with the Wax Pack. Did you ever read that book?
I did read the Wax Pack.
So, and it was during the pandemic and all that, but I literally got the hard copy book in the mail like 5 weeks early. Like,
yeah.
And I remember, like, I think I got it either right before or right when the world shut down. And then, so he did a whole thing on Twitter or on his website or somewhere. And he's like, this is book release day. And I'm like, I've already read it.
Finished it. Yeah, I got Alan Sepinwall's new book about Better Call Saul.
Oh, that
looks excellent.
Good. Yeah. Okay.
And I got that I don't know, 4 weeks ago. And it's not supposed to come out until next week. So
all right.
You never know, guys.
Yeah.
Pre-order.
And now for the Big 50 second edition. Chris, thanks for your time. Okay, so Sunday night, late night Reds, Tim and Ben will catch you up if there are more moves. We don't really think they're going to be too much, but there could be. And then I have a guest scheduled right now. The day for Red Leg Roundtable is the 4th. Normally it comes out early morning or midnight the night before. The scheduled interview is right now that morning. So it's going to be a little late coming out. I'm not going to say who it is yet because I'm still crossing my fingers to make sure. But I promise you it's a good one. Maybe I'll tell you off air, Chris. But again, thanks for joining us. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, do all the things that make us get more people in here. And we want 2025 to be a great year. So thanks again, Chris, and goodbye to everybody.